Some of us walk into a room and immediately know who's lying. We feel the tension between a married couple before they speak. We sense someone's depression behind their bright smile. We notice the micro-expressions that give away hidden anger, fear, or pain. We see patterns that others miss completely, and it's exhausting. If this describes you, you're not imagining things. You're not too sensitive or overthinking everything. You possess what Carl Jung called differentiated perception, the ability to see psychological truths that most people either can't detect or actively avoid seeing. Jung discovered this wasn't a gift. It was a psychological burden that either destroyed people or transformed them into something extraordinary. He called it his most dangerous discovery because these individuals consistently ended up isolated, exhausted, and unable to maintain normal relationships. Not because they were broken, but because seeing everything came with a cost no one understood. Today, you'll discover why your ability to see what others can't has felt like a curse, why people react so strongly to your observations, and most importantly, how to transform this overwhelming perception into integrated wisdom. This isn't about dimming your vision to fit in. It's about building a strong enough container to hold what you see without drowning in it. You're about to learn Jung's method for turning dangerous perception into conscious service. From psychological curse to evolutionary gift, the world needs what you see, but only if you learn to carry it wisely. Chapter 1. Naming the gift. Seeing the room behind the room. You notice things others don't. The way someone's voice changes when they mention their partner. How a friend's posture shifts when discussing their job. The energy that drops when certain topics arise. You catch inconsistencies in people's stories before they do. You sense emotional undercurrents that everyone else seems oblivious to. These aren't supernatural abilities. Jung identified this as differentiated perception, a psychological function that processes not just obvious social cues, but unconscious emotional states, repressed content, and psychological patterns that escape most people's awareness. Think about your last family gathering. While everyone exchanged pleasantries, you probably noticed the forced smiles, the subtle tension between relatives, the way certain subjects got quickly changed. You felt the collective discomfort that no one acknowledged. You saw the room behind the room, the psychological reality everyone agreed not to discuss. This happens because your brain is wired differently. Where others see surface-level interactions, you perceive multiple layers of psychological information simultaneously. You're reading micro-expressions, voice tonality, body language, and emotional energy patterns that most people filter out to function socially. Jung observed that roughly 1% of the population possesses this level of perceptual differentiation. You're rare, not damaged, but rarity comes with a price. People often label you as negative or intense because groups rely on certain blind spots to function. When you point out what everyone can sense but no one wants to acknowledge, you disrupt the collective agreement to remain unconscious. You become the person who says the emperor has no clothes, and nobody thanks you for it. Your friends might say you read too much into things, or look for problems that aren't there, but you know you're not creating these problems. You're simply seeing what's already happening beneath the surface. You're not the source of the dysfunction, you're the early warning system. The relief comes in understanding this. You're not broken, you're early. You're detecting psychological patterns before they become obvious to everyone else. Like a seismograph picking up tremors before the earthquake, your sensitivity registers what's coming before others feel the ground shake. But seeing everything creates its own problems. When your perception is constantly flooded with information that others don't process, you can start to feel like you're living in a different reality. The loneliness isn't just social, it's existential. You're often the only one who sees what you see, which makes you question your own sanity. This is why Jung considered differentiated perception dangerous, not because the perception itself is harmful, but because the psychological isolation it creates can be devastating. When you consistently see truths that others deny or ignore, you become a mirror that society can't bear to look into. Understanding your gift is the first step toward integration. You possess a rare form of consciousness that humanity needs, even when it doesn't want it. The question isn't how to see less, it's how to see more wisely, with the psychological strength to handle what your perception reveals. Chapter 2. When other people spill into you. Your biggest challenge isn't what you see, it's what you absorb. Jung called this participation mystique, the psychological phenomenon where your emotional boundaries dissolve and other people's feelings become your feelings. Their anxiety becomes your anxiety. Their depression settles into your body. You might walk into a coffee shop feeling perfectly fine, then leave feeling inexplicably sad or agitated. You spend time with a stressed friend and find yourself unable to sleep that night, carrying their worry in your bones. During family visits, you absorb the household's emotional atmosphere so completely that you need days to recover your own emotional center. This isn't empathy, it's something more invasive. Empathy allows you to understand someone else's emotions while maintaining your own emotional boundaries. Participation mystique means those boundaries collapse entirely. You don't just understand how someone feels, you literally feel it in your own body. Jung observed this pattern repeatedly in his highly perceptive patients. They would describe emotions that didn't match their life circumstances, moods that appeared suddenly after social interactions, and physical sensations that had no medical explanation. They were carrying psychological material that wasn't their own. The most confusing part is that this absorption happens unconsciously. You don't choose to take on someone else's anxiety. It simply transfers to you through proximity. A co-worker's frustration becomes your restlessness. Your partner's hidden resentment shows up as tension in your shoulders. Your parents' suppressed grief appears as a heaviness you can't explain. This creates a cruel irony. The very sensitivity that allows you to help others ends up overwhelming you with their unconscious material. You become a psychological sponge, soaking up emotions and energies that don't belong to you but feel completely real in your body. The signs of emotional flooding are subtle at first. You might notice sudden mood changes after being around certain people. Energy that doesn't match your actual circumstances. Thoughts that don't sound like your own inner voice. Physical symptoms, headaches, tension, fatigue that appear after social interactions and have no medical cause. Over time, chronic absorption creates a devastating problem. You lose contact with your own authentic feelings. When you're constantly carrying other people's emotional material, your own inner voice gets drowned out. You start making decisions based on absorbed emotions rather than genuine inner guidance. You become a stranger to yourself. Jung taught a simple but powerful practice for beginning to sort this out. Several times a day, pause and ask yourself, is this feeling mine, or did I pick it up from someone else? Don't worry about getting the answer right immediately. Just start making the distinction conscious. Notice patterns. Do you feel anxious after phone calls with certain people? Does your mood shift in specific environments? Do particular relationships leave you emotionally drained? These observations help you recognize when you're absorbing rather than simply feeling. The goal isn't to become emotionally closed off. It's to maintain conscious awareness of what belongs to you and what you've unconsciously absorbed from others. This discrimination is the foundation of healthy boundaries and authentic self-knowledge. When you can consistently tell the difference between your emotions and absorbed emotions, you'll start to reclaim your psychological center. You'll discover feelings and desires you didn't know you had, buried under layers of unconsciously absorbed material from other people. Chapter 3. Why the truth teller gets blamed. You've experienced this countless times. You gently mention something you've observed, maybe that someone seems upset, or that there's tension in the room, or that something doesn't feel right about a situation. Instead of acknowledgement, you get attacked. You're told you're creating drama, being negative, or making problems where none exist. This isn't coincidence, it's psychological defense. Jung called this shadow projection, when people unconsciously attack you for reflecting what they refuse to acknowledge in themselves or their situation. Here's what's really happening. Your clear perception acts like a mirror, showing people truths they're not ready to face. The unconscious mind has two choices when confronted with unwanted reality: to integrate the information or attack the messenger. Most people choose to attack the messenger. Think about a time when you noticed obvious problems in a friend's relationship. Maybe their partner was controlling, dismissive, or clearly losing interest. When you carefully expressed concern, your friend probably got defensive, accused you of being judgmental, or insisted you were wrong. They might have even pulled away from you entirely. You weren't creating the problems in their relationship. You were simply seeing what was already there. But your perception threatened their psychological defense system, which required them to remain unconscious about these issues. Your clarity became their enemy. This pattern repeats everywhere. In families, you might be labeled the troublemaker for pointing out dysfunction that everyone else works hard to ignore. At social gatherings, you become the downer for sensing emotional undercurrents that others pretend don't exist. In group settings, you're seen as too intense for picking up on power dynamics and hidden agendas. Jung discovered that groups maintain cohesion partly through collective unconscious agreements about what will and won't be acknowledged. When you see through these agreements, simply by existing authentically, you become a destabilizing force. You're violating the unspoken contract to remain unconscious together. The psychological term for this is scapegoating. Highly perceptive individuals often become the designated problem in every group they enter, not because they cause problems, but because they reveal problems that already exist. You become the repository for all that the group cannot consciously acknowledge about itself. This explains why your attempts to help often backfire so spectacularly. When you point out what you see, people don't experience it as helpful insight. They experience it as psychological threat. Your perception challenges their defense mechanisms, and they respond as if under attack. The most painful part is that you're usually trying to help. You see someone heading toward obvious disaster and feel compelled to warn them. You notice destructive patterns and want to offer support. But your good intentions get twisted into evidence of your negative or judgmental nature. Understanding this dynamic changes everything. When people react defensively to your observations, you're not dealing with conscious disagreement. You're triggering unconscious defense mechanisms. Their reaction isn't really about you. It's about their inability to face what you're reflecting back to them. This doesn't mean you should stop seeing clearly or sharing your perceptions. But it does mean you need to choose your moments carefully, frame your observations skillfully, and protect your own energy from the inevitable backlash that comes with speaking truth to unconsciousness. Chapter 4: 4 Ways of Seeing. Find yourself here. Not all perceptive people are the same. Jung identified 4 distinct patterns of differentiated perception, each with specific strengths, vulnerabilities, and integration challenges. Understanding your particular style is crucial for learning how to work with your abilities rather than being overwhelmed by them. The empath, feeling intuitive. You don't just see emotions, you feel them in your own body. Walking into a room where people have been arguing leaves you with physical tension. Being around someone who's grieving fills you with unexplained sadness. You absorb the emotional atmosphere of every environment you enter. Your gift is profound emotional intelligence. You can sense what people are feeling, even when they're hiding it from themselves. You know when someone needs comfort before they ask for it. You feel the emotional truth behind people's words and actions. Your challenge is emotional overwhelm. Because you feel everything so intensely, you can become flooded by emotions that aren't your own. You might avoid crowded places, struggle in emotionally charged environments, or find yourself exhausted after social interactions. Your path to integration involves learning to distinguish between your emotions and absorbed emotions, developing energetic boundaries, and finding ways to discharge emotional energy that doesn't belong to you. The forecaster thinking intuitive. You see patterns and predict outcomes with startling accuracy. You can sense when relationships are heading toward crisis, when someone's behavior is building toward consequences, or when situations are developing in dangerous directions. You see the logical conclusions of unconscious processes that others can't yet perceive. Your gift is pattern recognition and systems thinking. You understand how psychological and social dynamics play out over time. You can often prevent disasters by seeing them coming before anyone else notices the warning signs. Your challenge is being right too early. People don't believe your predictions until they come true, at which point it's often too late to change course. You might be dismissed as pessimistic or paranoid when you're actually seeing clearly into the future. Your path to integration involves learning to present your insights in ways people can hear, timing your warnings appropriately, and accepting that you can't save everyone from consequences they're not ready to avoid. The body radar. Sensation intuitive. You sense illness, tension, and physical states before they become obvious. You might notice someone's health problems before symptoms appear, feel physical tension in others' bodies, or sense fatigue and stress in people who seem energetic on the surface. Your gift is somatic intelligence, the ability to read the body's wisdom. You can often detect physical and emotional imbalances before they become serious problems. You serve as an early warning system for health and wellness issues. Your challenge is carrying others' physical sensations in your own body. You might experience unexplained aches, pains, or energy shifts after being around certain people. You may absorb others' physical tension and fatigue. Your path to integration involves developing body awareness practices, learning to ground and clear physical energy that isn't yours, and using your sensitivity to help rather than absorb. The floodlight, pure intuitive. You see everything patterns, emotions, hidden motivations, future possibilities, spiritual dimensions. Your perception is so wide and deep that it's often difficult to sort and communicate what you see. You live in a state of constant input from multiple levels of reality. Your gift is comprehensive awareness.
You see the full picture when others see only fragments. You understand complex situations from multiple angles simultaneously. You perceive dimensions of reality that most people never access. Your challenge is overwhelming input. You see so much that it's hard to function practically in the world. You might struggle to make decisions, communicate your perceptions clearly, or focus on everyday tasks when you're constantly receiving floods of intuitive information. Your path to integration involves developing filters and boundaries, learning to focus your perception consciously, and finding ways to ground comprehensive awareness into practical wisdom. Which pattern describes your experience? Most people recognize themselves clearly in one primary style, though you might have aspects of others. Understanding your specific type helps you develop targeted strategies for managing your perceptive abilities without being overwhelmed by them. Chapter 5. 3 Real Dangers and How to Notice Them Early. Your ability to see what others can't comes with genuine risks. Jung identified 3 specific dangers that can destroy highly perceptive individuals if left unaddressed. Learning to recognize these dangers early allows you to take protective action before they become overwhelming. Danger 1. Disrupting the group. Every group, families, friend circles, workplaces, communities, functions partly through unconscious agreements about what will and won't be acknowledged. When you see through these agreements, you become a destabilizing force, even when you're trying to help. Early warning signs. People consistently react defensively to your observations. You're regularly told you're too intense or negative. Others seem uncomfortable around you, even when you're being supportive. You notice that groups change their energy when you arrive. What's happening? Your presence challenges the collective unconscious agreements that keep the group functioning. Your clear perception threatens their psychological defense systems, making you feel like a threat even when you're offering genuine insight. Today's protection. Start paying attention to group dynamics before you speak. Notice the emotional atmosphere. Are people invested in not seeing something? Is there collective resistance to acknowledging certain truths? When you sense strong unconscious agreements to remain unaware, proceed very carefully with your observations. Danger 2. Psychological isolation. When you consistently see what others don't, you can end up feeling like you're living in a different reality. This isn't just social loneliness, it's existential isolation. You become an island of awareness in an ocean of unconsciousness. Early warning signs. You feel like you're the only one who sees what's really happening. Others' explanations for situations seem naive or incomplete to you. You start questioning your own perceptions because they're so different from everyone else's. You feel fundamentally different from other people. What's happening? Your superior perception creates a gap between your reality and others' reality. Without validation for what you see, you can begin to doubt your own sanity or feel completely alone in the world. Today's protection. Start documenting your observations privately. Keep a journal where you record what you notice and how situations develop over time. This creates a record that validates your perceptions when others deny or minimize what you see. Danger 3. Identity dissolution. This is the most dangerous risk. When you absorb so much psychological material from others, you can lose contact with your own authentic self. You become flooded with external content and forget who you are underneath all the absorbed emotions, thoughts, and energies. Early warning signs. You can't tell which emotions are genuinely yours. Your mood changes dramatically after social interactions. You find yourself taking on others' opinions, preferences, or ways of being without choosing to.
You feel like you don't know yourself anymore. What's happening? Participation mystique has progressed to the point where your psychological boundaries have dissolved entirely. You're carrying so much unconscious material from others that your own personality gets buried underneath. Today's protection? Establish a daily practice of solitude. Spend at least 20 minutes alone without any external input. No phone, no music, no reading. Just sit quietly and notice what remains when you're not absorbing anything from others. This helps you reconnect with your authentic inner voice. These dangers are progressive. They start small and build over time if not addressed. The key is catching them early, when you can still take corrective action before they overwhelm your psychological system. None of these dangers mean you should suppress your perception or try to become less aware. They mean you need to develop conscious relationship with your abilities. Jung's integration process teaches you how to maintain your perceptive gifts while protecting yourself from their potential destructive effects. Chapter 6. Phase 1. Sort the noise. What's mine? What's not? The foundation of integrating superior perception is learning to distinguish between your authentic inner experience and the psychological material you've unconsciously absorbed from others. Jung called this conscious discrimination the ability to sort internal content by its actual source. This isn't as simple as it sounds. When you've been absorbing others' emotions, thoughts, and energies for years, the boundaries between yours and not yours become completely blurred. You need a systematic approach to untangling this psychological knot. The daily settling practice. Set aside 1015 minutes each day for what Jung called psychological settling. Find a quiet space where you won't be interrupted. Sit comfortably and breathe naturally. Don't try to meditate or achieve any particular state. Just allow your internal experience to settle like sediment in a glass of muddy water. Notice what bubbles up, emotions that don't match your circumstances, thoughts that don't sound like your inner voice, physical sensations that have no obvious cause. Don't analyze or judge these experiences, just observe them with curiosity. Ask yourself gently, does this feeling belong to me, or did I pick it up from someone else? You don't need definitive answers. The goal is to make the sorting process conscious rather than automatic. The language shift. Change how you speak about your observations, even to yourself. Instead of saying you are angry or they're being dishonest, try I notice what seems like anger, or I'm sensing something that feels like deception. This subtle shift prevents you from taking on others' emotional states as if they were factual truths. It maintains the distinction between your perception and their reality. You're acknowledging what you see without absorbing it into your own emotional system. The two-column practice. Keep a simple journal with 2 columns, mine and not sure, divided by not mine. Throughout the day, when you notice strong emotions or thoughts, quickly categorize them. Don't overthink it. Go with your first instinct. In the mind column, feelings that make sense given your actual circumstances, thoughts that sound like your authentic inner voice, emotions that feel rooted in your personal experience. In the not sure divided by not mine column, sudden mood shifts after social interactions, emotions that don't match your life situation, thoughts that feel foreign to your usual thinking patterns. Review your entries weekly. You'll start noticing patterns about which people and situations cause you to absorb external material. The 3-breath reset. Before entering social situations, especially ones you know are emotionally charged, take 3 conscious breaths and set a gentle intention. I will notice what I notice without absorbing what I observe. After social interactions, especially difficult ones, repeat this process. Take 3 breaths and consciously release any emotions or energies that don't belong to you. Imagine them flowing out of your body with each exhale. The body scan check-in. Several times throughout the day, especially after being around other people, do a quick body scan. Notice areas of tension, unusual sensations, or energy that feels heavy or foreign. Ask each area, is this mine? If the answer feels like no, breathe into that area and imagine releasing whatever you've unconsciously absorbed. Don't force it. Just create the intention to let go of what doesn't belong to you. The validation practice. Start keeping track of your perceptions and how situations develop over time. When you sense something about a person or situation, make a private note. Watch how things unfold in the following weeks or months. This practice serves two purposes. It validates the accuracy of your perceptions when others deny what you see, and it helps you distinguish between accurate perception and absorbed anxiety or projection. This phase requires patience. You've been unconsciously blending your inner experience with absorbed material for years. It takes time to untangle this confusion. Be gentle with yourself as you learn to sort the psychological noise. The goal isn't perfect clarity immediately. It's developing conscious awareness of the sorting process so you can begin to reclaim your authentic psychological center from underneath all the material that doesn't actually belong to you. Chapter 7. Phase 2. Shadow Work Without Shame. Here's an uncomfortable truth. People with superior perception often see others' shadows clearly because they haven't integrated their own. The more you deny your own capacity for selfishness, deception, or cruelty, the more disturbed you'll be by seeing these qualities in others. Jung discovered that what most irritates us about others usually reflects something we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. This doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you a complete person who contains the full spectrum of human possibilities. The mirror principle. Start paying attention to your strongest reactions to others. When someone's behavior particularly annoys, disgusts, or enrages you, there's likely a shadow element at play. The intensity of your reaction often indicates the strength of your own denial about possessing similar qualities. If someone's selfishness triggers intense judgment in you, explore where you might be selfish in ways you don't want to acknowledge. If dishonesty in others makes you particularly angry, examine where you might be deceiving yourself or others in subtle ways. This isn't about taking responsibility for others' behavior. It's about using your reactions as information about your own unconscious contents. The gentle inquiry practice. When you notice strong judgment arising about someone else's behavior, try this process. Write down specifically what bothers you about their actions. Be detailed. What exactly are they doing that triggers your reaction? Ask yourself, where might I do something similar, even in small ways? Look for parallels in your own behavior, thoughts, or motivations. The connection might not be obvious at first. Instead of condemning yourself for having these qualities, practice curiosity. Interesting that I contain this capacity too. How does this show up in my life? How might this serve me sometimes? The humanity practice. Remember that everything you see in others exists within the full spectrum of human nature, including your own. You contain the capacity for every behavior you observe, even if you don't act on these capacities. This realization often brings relief rather than shame. When you acknowledge your own shadow contents, you stop being shocked by seeing them in others. You can observe human behavior with more compassion and less reactive judgment. The integration homework. Choose one shadow quality that you've been denying in yourself, something you see clearly in others but insist you don't possess. For 1 week, notice small ways this quality shows up in your own behavior. Maybe you judge others for being manipulative,
but you notice that you sometimes withhold information to get certain responses. Maybe you criticize others for being needy, but you recognize that you sometimes use helping others as a way to feel important. The goal isn't to become more manipulative or needy. It's to acknowledge these aspects of yourself consciously, so they stop controlling you unconsciously. The humility line. As you work with your shadow, maintain what Jung called conscious humility. Remember, I carry a light. I am not the light. Your perceptive abilities are a gift for service, not evidence of your superiority over others. When you catch yourself feeling elevated or special because of what you see, return to shadow work. Superior perception without shadow integration leads to spiritual pride and judgment, the opposite of genuine wisdom. The repair practice. When you recognize shadow behaviors in yourself, make small repairs where possible. If you notice you've been subtly manipulative, practice being more direct. If you recognize selfish motivations, look for ways to act more generously. These repairs aren't about becoming perfect. They're about developing conscious relationship with your full humanity so you can see others clearly without judgment or shock. Shadow work transforms superior perception from a weapon of judgment into a tool of compassion. When you acknowledge your own capacity for every human behavior, you can witness others' struggles with understanding rather than condemnation. This phase often brings unexpected relief. Many highly perceptive people carry tremendous guilt about seeing others' flaws so clearly. Shadow integration helps you understand that you're not separate from or superior to the people you observe. You're simply more conscious about shared human contents. Chapter 8, Phase 3 Containers, How to Help Without Drowning. Now that you can distinguish your authentic experience from absorbed material and you've begun integrating your own shadow, you're ready to learn the most crucial skill: how to offer your perceptions in service of others without depleting yourself. Jung called this developing psychological containers, the ability to hold others' unconscious contents temporarily while maintaining awareness that they are not your own. This allows you to help without drowning in others' psychological material. The consent practice. Before sharing deep observations, ask for permission. I'm noticing something about your situation. Would you like to hear my perspective? Or would you prefer I just listen right now? This simple question prevents you from forcing insights on people who aren't ready to receive them. Many highly perceptive people feel compelled to share what they see, especially when they sense danger or dysfunction. But unsolicited insights, no matter how accurate, often create defensive reactions rather than genuine help. Time and role boundaries. Decide in advance how much emotional energy you're willing to spend in each interaction. I have about 30 minutes to really listen deeply right now, or I can be in support mode for the next hour. Then I need to take care of my own needs. Also clarify your role. Are you being asked to listen as a friend, offer advice as someone with insight, or provide professional consultation? Different roles require different boundaries and types of engagement. The dosing principle. Give only what someone can digest today. Even when you see the whole picture clearly, most people can only integrate small pieces of insight at a time. Overwhelming someone with everything you perceive usually shuts down their ability to use any of it. Start with gentle observations. I'm noticing you seem more tired lately. How are you feeling about everything? Rather than, your relationship is clearly dysfunctional, your job is draining your life energy, and you're heading toward a breakdown. Strategic ordinariness. Choose where to be ordinary on purpose so you can be extraordinary where it matters most. You don't need to see deeply into every situation or offer insights in every interaction. Sometimes the most helpful thing you can do
is simply be a regular person, laugh at their jokes, complain about the weather, discuss mundane topics. This gives others a break from being seen so clearly and preserves your energy for situations where your perception is genuinely needed. The professional distinction. Learn the difference between offering personal support and providing therapeutic insight. If you're not trained as a professional counselor, be careful about taking on therapeutic roles in relationships. You can say, "I care about you, and I notice you're struggling, but I think you might benefit from talking to someone with professional training about this." Your perception can help you recognize when someone needs professional support, but it doesn't qualify you to provide that support yourself. Energy management techniques. After offering deep support, consciously clear your energy field. Take a shower and imagine washing away any psychological material you absorbed during the interaction. Spend time in nature. Do physical exercise to discharge emotional energy that isn't yours. Develop rituals that help you transition from helper mode back to your own life. This might be as simple as changing clothes, taking 3 deep breaths, or spending a few minutes alone before engaging with your own responsibilities. The boundary script. Practice saying, "I can see this is really painful for you, and I want to support you. Right now, I'm at my capacity for taking in intense emotional material. Can we continue this conversation tomorrow when I'm more resourced?" Healthy boundaries aren't selfish. They ensure you can continue offering genuine help rather than burning out and becoming unavailable entirely. The follow-up practice. After intense helping sessions, check in with yourself within 24 hours. Are you carrying emotional residue that doesn't belong to you? Are you obsessing about their problems? Are you feeling responsible for fixing their situation? If yes, return to the sorting practices from phase 1. Remind yourself, "I can see clearly and offer support, but I cannot live their life for them or save them from their own learning process." This phase often challenges people with strong helping instincts. Learning to contain your impulse to fix everyone and everything requires practice. But mastering this skill allows you to serve others sustainably without sacrificing your own well-being or effectiveness.
Chapter 9. 2 possible futures. Breakdown or blessing. Your superior perception will lead to one of 2 outcomes: psychological breakdown or conscious blessing. The difference lies entirely in how you integrate your abilities. Let me show you both paths so you can choose consciously. The unintegrated path. Breakdown. Without conscious integration, your perceptive abilities eventually overwhelm your psychological system. You become identified with your superior function rather than developing it as one aspect of a balanced personality. This path often starts with spiritual inflation, believing you must save everyone from their unconsciousness. You begin preaching rather than serving, judging rather than understanding. People start avoiding you because your insights feel like attacks rather than gifts. Sarah's story illustrates this path. Unnaturally gifted, intuitive, she could see relationship problems, career disasters, and personal breakdowns months before they occurred. But she never learned to integrate her perception consciously. She became the friend who always pointed out what was wrong. She couldn't let people make their own mistakes or learn their own lessons. Every conversation became an intervention. Her relationships dissolved one by one as people felt exposed and judged rather than supported. Eventually, Sarah isolated herself entirely, convinced that others were too unconscious to appreciate her insights. She developed chronic anxiety from absorbing everyone's psychological material without boundaries. Her gift became her prison. The unintegrated path leads to preaching instead of serving, isolation disguised as superiority, chronic overwhelm and anxiety, loss of authentic relationships, identification with a superior function, eventual psychological collapse. The integrated path. When superior perception is integrated consciously, it becomes a gift that serves both individual and collective development. You learn to see clearly without attachment, to serve without drowning, to speak truth without forcing it on others. Michael's story shows this integration. He possessed the same level of perceptive ability as Sarah, but learned Jung's individuation process. He spent years distinguishing between his authentic feelings and absorbed material, integrating his own shadow and developing healthy containers for his insights. Rather than becoming the friend who pointed out problems, Michael became the friend who created safety for others to discover their own truths. His presence invited authenticity rather than defensiveness. People felt seen and understood rather than exposed and judged. Michael chose his moments carefully. He offered insights only when asked or when he sensed genuine readiness to receive them. He maintained relationships with others who could handle his depth, while also enjoying ordinary friendships that didn't require intensive perception. Most importantly, Michael used his abilities in service of consciousness evolution rather than ego gratification. He became a bridge between what is and what's becoming, helping others develop their own awareness rather than remaining dependent on his insights. The integrated path leads to steady presence that invites authenticity, fewer words, but more impact, sustainable helping without burnout, deep relationships with select individuals, ordinary connections that refresh your spirit, service without attachment to outcomes. Jung's own dark season. Jung himself walked both paths before finding integration. During his confrontation with the unconscious from 1913 to 1919, his superior perception nearly destroyed him. He was flooded with psychological material from his own unconscious and from his work with patients. Jung later wrote, "I was menaced by a psychosis and was saved only by my ability to understand what was happening to me through my work with patients." His breakdown became breakthrough only because he learned to integrate his overwhelming perceptions consciously. Jung's dark season taught him that superior perception without integration leads to possession by the very forces you're trying to understand. But conscious integration transforms dangerous perception into cultural medicine. The choice point. You're at a choice point now. You can continue using your perception, unconsciously absorbing everything, reacting to everything you see, overwhelming others with unsolicited insights, and eventually face breakdown. Or you can choose the integration path, learning to sort internal contents consciously, developing shadow awareness, creating healthy boundaries, and using your perception in genuine service rather than ego defense. The world needs what you see, but only if you learn to carry it consciously. Unintegrated perception creates more problems than it solves. Integrated perception becomes a healing force that helps consciousness evolve. Which path will you choose? The choice isn't made once, but renewed daily through your commitment to conscious integration rather than unconscious reaction. Chapter 10. Finding Your People and the Gentle Reveal. The path of integration cannot be walked alone. You need what Jung called the few who understand, people who can engage with your perception without defensiveness, who can handle depth without drowning, who recognize authenticity because they've developed it themselves. Finding your people requires strategic discernment. Not everyone can handle what you see, and trying to force deep connections with people who aren't ready will exhaust you and alienate them. 3 types of allies. Fellow seers, others who possess similar perceptive abilities. These connections often happen instantly. You recognize each other as members of what Jung called the conscious minority. There's a quality of presence, an authenticity that cannot be fabricated. With fellow seers, you can be completely authentic without fear of overwhelming them. They understand the burden of seeing clearly because they carry it themselves. These relationships are rare but essential for psychological survival. Those engaged in individuation, people actively working on their own consciousness development through therapy, spiritual practice, or inner work. They may not possess superior perception themselves, but they understand its value because they're committed to their own growth. These individuals can handle your insights without defensiveness because they're already examining themselves honestly. They demonstrate what Jung called psychological mindedness, genuine interest in inner reality rather than just external circumstances. Natural containers, individuals who, while not possessing superior perception themselves, have what Jung called natural container function, the ability to hold psychological content without being overwhelmed by it. These might be people who have weathered significant life challenges with grace, elders who have developed wisdom through experience, or individuals with naturally stable emotional centers. They provide grounding energy and can witness your depth without being threatened by it.
The recognition process. Jung developed specific indicators for identifying safe relationships. Look for people who ask genuine questions about your observations rather than immediately defending against them, can acknowledge their own contradictions and limitations without shame, maintain emotional stability when confronted with uncomfortable truths, show genuine curiosity about consciousness and personal growth, demonstrate the ability to sit with uncertainty rather than needing immediate answers. Pay attention to how people respond when you share small insights. Do they become curious or defensive? Can they consider perspectives that challenge their current worldview? Do they ask follow-up questions or shut down the conversation? The gradual revelation protocol. Never reveal the full extent of your perceptive abilities immediately. Jung taught a careful process for testing relationship safety. Start with gentle observations about obvious things. Notice their response pattern to feedback. Assess whether they become defensive or curious. Gradually increase depth based on their demonstrated capacity. Always frame insights as offerings rather than pronouncements. For example, instead of saying, "I can see that you're deeply unhappy in your marriage and heading toward divorce," try, "You seem like you've been carrying some heavy things lately. How are you doing with everything?" Watch how they respond before going deeper. The safety tests. Before sharing significant insights, test for psychological safety. Share something vulnerable about yourself and notice if they respond with empathy or judgment. Disagree gently with something they've said and see if they can handle differing perspectives. Express a concern about something in their life and observe whether they get defensive or appreciative. These tests aren't manipulative, they're protective. You're assessing whether someone can engage with depth and authenticity without becoming reactive or defensive. Managing the reveal. When you do find safe people, resist the temptation to download everything you see immediately. Even safe relationships can be overwhelmed by too much insight too quickly. Respect their capacity for integration. Give them time to process what you share before offering more. Remember that your goal is connection and mutual growth, not proving how much you can see. Ask for feedback. How does that land with you? Or what's your experience of what I just shared? This keeps the exchange relational rather than one-directional. When relationships can't handle your depth. Not every relationship needs to accommodate your full perceptive abilities. Some connections serve other purposes, shared activities, like companionship, professional collaboration. Learn to appreciate relationships at different levels without needing everyone to understand everything about you. This prevents the isolation that comes from demanding that all relationships operate at maximum depth. With people who can't handle your perception, practice strategic ordinariness. Enjoy surface-level connections for what they offer without trying to force them deeper. Building your circle. Actively cultivate relationships with people who can handle your authenticity. This might mean joining groups focused on consciousness development, seeking therapy or coaching relationships, or participating in spiritual communities that value inner work. Remember that finding your people often requires you to be visible first. If you hide your perceptive abilities completely, other conscious individuals can't recognize you either. The goal isn't to find people who agree with everything you see, but people who can engage with your perceptions as valuable contributions rather than threats. Quality matters more than quantity. A few deep, authentic relationships sustain you better than many shallow ones. Conclusion: don't see less. See wiser. You've learned Jung's most dangerous discovery, that some individuals possess consciousness that exceeds collective readiness, and this advanced perception will either destroy them through isolation and overwhelm or transform them into exactly what humanity needs for psychological evolution. Your superior perception isn't a malfunction. It's an advanced feature of consciousness development. You're not broken because you see everything others miss. You're psychologically ahead of your time, serving as an early warning system for truths that collective consciousness isn't yet ready to acknowledge. The 4 milestones of integration. As you continue this journey, watch for these signs of successful integration. Naming. You can identify your specific pattern of perception and understand how it operates. You've moved from "something's wrong with me" to "I have a rare psychological gift that requires conscious development." Integrating. You can distinguish between your authentic inner experience and absorbed material from others. You've begun shadow work and developed healthy boundaries. You use your perception consciously rather than being overwhelmed by it. Serving. Your abilities have become a gift you offer rather than a burden you carry. You can help others without drowning in their psychological material. People feel safe and understood in your presence rather than exposed and judged. Legacy. You contribute to consciousness evolution by modeling integrated awareness. You help others develop their own perception rather than remaining dependent on yours. Your presence invites authenticity and growth in everyone you encounter. Your integration maintenance kit. Integration isn't a permanent achievement. It's a dynamic process requiring ongoing attention. Maintain your psychological health through regular solitude for distinguishing your authentic voice from absorbed material. Chosen depth. Selective engagement with people and situations that warrant your full perception. Ongoing shadow work to prevent projection and maintain humility. One creative outlet that allows you to process and express the vast amounts of information you receive. The final truth. Jung's most dangerous discovery wasn't that some people see everything others miss. It's that most people who see everything never learn to use what they see wisely. The danger isn't in your perception itself. It's in failing to develop conscious relationship with extraordinary abilities. When you try to dim your vision to fit in with collective unconsciousness, you betray both yourself and humanity's evolutionary needs. Your sensitivity isn't too much for this world. You are exactly what consciousness evolution requires. Once you learn to wield your perception as consciously as Jung learned to wield his, the choice is yours: unconscious suffering or conscious service, dangerous isolation or integrated wisdom, psychological curse or evolutionary contribution. You were born to see everything, not to suffer in silence, but to serve consciousness evolution. The world needs your insights delivered with the integration, wisdom, and strategic awareness that transform dangerous perception into healing medicine. Your gift is not your burden. Your unconscious relationship to your gift is your burden. Master Jung's integration process, and you become exactly what he believed highly perceptive individuals were meant to be. Consciousness pioneers preparing humanity for psychological development that is inevitable but not yet obvious. Don't see less, see wiser. The future of human consciousness depends on individuals like you learning to carry their extraordinary perception consciously rather than being crushed by it unconsciously. Your time of dangerous isolation is ending. Your service to consciousness evolution is just beginning.